Hi everyone, Aidan here at the etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Yakima LongHaul hitch-mounted bike rack and seeing how it fits on our 2018 Thor Miramar Motorhome. Now the LongHaul is a hanging style bike rack, which means the bike hangs by the frame down below these arms. And this is going to be a rack designed for use with motorhomes. That's really important because a lot of bike racks aren't approved for motorhome use. You're going to have a lot of extra shock and vibration back here compared to your typical passenger vehicle, and the bike rack needs to be built to withstand that, and the LongHaul is. This can support up to 37.5 pounds per bike and carry up to 4 bikes. So if you're looking for a way to get you and your family's bikes to your destination, this can be a great way to do it because it's a well-built rack with a lot of capability. Now, being a hanging rack, there are some limitations. The first being alternative frame bikes. We need a nice level place to hang the bikes, so if you do have an alternative frame, a bike adapter bar is going to be needed to make sure it hangs level over these arms. Same with things like a kid's bike. Those smaller frames just don't play well with these dual arms because this is just a lot harder to fit in between those smaller frames than it would be with a large adult bike. And something specific to our motorhome here is clearance with the hitch. The hitch sits very far recessed underneath the motorhome, as you'll see later. But for right now, what that means for us that we can see is the bike rack sits very close to the back. And on our mountain bike here, we're actually having some clearance issues with our handlebars. Now, part of that is because this particular motorhome has a secondary ladder strapped to the ladder. So that's causing us some clearance issues. But even so, it would be very close to hitting the back of the motorhome here. So I do want to give one measurement before we get the bike unloaded, just to see if it'll work well with your bikes. And that measurement is going to be from the back of the motorhome to the center of that first cradle. That's going to be 12 inches, pretty much exactly. So what you can do is go to your bikes, measure from the frame, 12 inches out, and you can see where it's going to sit. Now, if you've got a smaller road bike, things that don't have near as wide of handlebars, I think you're going to be just fine. But for most cases, that's just going to be a larger mountain bike type of thing that we have to worry about. As for getting the bike unloaded, it's going to be held in place with these zip strips. And what those are is really just a set of ratcheting straps held in on either end with 2 tabs. So pinch those 2 tabs, lift up on the zip strip, and it'll fully remove. There's going to be 2 on the top and then 1 on the side here on the seat post to limit our side-to-side movement, helping with bike-to-bike contact. Once those are done, you can go over to your bike, lift up, and away from the rack. I'll go over and set this to the side, and as I do that, you can take a closer look at the rack and see some things like the cradles it was sitting in. They've got some grooves in there to not pinch any of the brake cables that might be lining up with them. And when you're done, I do like to replace these back on the bike rack so we don't lose them, but some people prefer to keep them inside the vehicle so no one can take them when you're not around. And then these can fold up for a bit more compact storage. At this point, we can point out a few other things like the integrated cable lock. It's pretty hard to see since the mast comes so close to the back of the motorhome, but it does house in the mast. You can run it up through the bikes and it'll lock to a tab at the front left arm, right next to the integrated bottle opener. Once you're done, that can just slide right back in, so you don't have to worry about forgetting it. And from here, we can get some more measurements. Starting with the closest point to the motorhome, which is going to be right up here by that cable lock. Again, kind of hard to see, but you've got 2 inches of space right here, which doesn't sound like a lot, but the bike rack is very solid. There is a little bit of up and down movement, but not much because that anti-rattle down at the hitch is definitely doing its job. For the furthest out point, going from the furthest out point on the motorhome, not including the ladder, to the end of the arms right here, we're going to be looking at 32.5 inches, which for a 4-bike rack is actually really good. This thing does sit very close to the motorhome, but I think it can be a big benefit because we're not adding as much length to an already long vehicle. And if you want to leave it in the hitch between rides, we can fold those arms down using this lever up top. It'll lock in place, and you can see just how condensed it's become. In our case, it doesn't stick out any further than the ladder that they already have strapped back here. And from that furthest out point again, it only adds 7 inches, which is pretty spectacular. Again, it sits very close, which some people might not be a fan of, but I do think it's great because it saves a lot of space. It doesn't come into contact or block this light right here. And one thing I will say is it does somewhat block the license plate. That's the only downside here, because it does sit so close to that license plate and comes right in front of it. Moving down to the hitch though, it is working with our 2" by 2" receiver tube, and that anti-rattle bolt is going to slide through there and keep things nice and tight. It is a locking anti-rattle bolt, which is key to the cable lock integrated on the mast. So you don't have to worry about keeping multiple sets of keys around. It's all going to be all together under one system. Now, if I had to compare this to anything else, I'd maybe say the Kurt Premium. It's going to be a hanging style bike rack, also motorhome approved. With that one, I don't think it's as nice of construction, but it does have a pretty good weight capacity, and there's a 5 bike option there too. So if you do need a little bit more capacity, then that might be the way to go. But for me, I think the Long Haul has a better construction, it's easier to use, and it's a lot more solid. So for me, it's the better fit for the 2018 Thor Miramar Motorhome. Thanks for watching.
Now we're going to go ahead and take it on our test course. First we'll start with the slaloms. This is going to show the side-to-side action. It's kind of going to mimic the movements that you'll see whenever you're driving down the road normally. And now with the fold speed bumps. These are going to be pretty much like normal speed bumps. You get to see the up and down action of the bike rack and see how it holds up. Now we'll have the alternating speed bumps. This is going to be more so like the uneven roads and some of that uneven terrain you might be traveling on.